Good morning, History 131 students. This is a continuation of a lecture for Chapter 2, which is entitled uh, The Complex Society in Southwest Asia and the Nile Valley. It covers from about 3800 BCE to 500 BCE. Uh, just a rehash, we talked about the origin of man, the Paleolithic Age, the Neolithic Age, and an important occurrence during that particular time was the agricultural revolution, which led to the beginning of civilization. And the first civilization we talked about was the Mesopotamian civilization, which comprised three groups. First, the Sumerians, who were conquered by the Akkadians, and the Akkadians, who were conquered by the Babylonians. The Sumerian gave us a new style of writing called cuneiform, wedge-shaped writing on clay tablets. Remember the environment that we're talking about in Mesopotamia? The land between the rivers, modern day Iraq. The rivers are Tigris and the Euphrates. It's desert. They also invented the new building block called making bricks from the mud. They enclosed their cities or towns. They built temples called the ziggurat. But to the south of them, another civilization was emerging, and that would be the Egyptian civilization, which dating started about 3100 BCE when King Menzies, this is your first personality, unite Upper and Lower Egypt. The Egyptian civilization, as you've seen pictures, movies, it's a brilliant civilization, totally dependent upon the Nile River. The Nile began its journey northward from Ethiopia every summer, flooding and bringing rich dirt called the Black Land. Come on, kill 'em. This allowed the Egyptian to develop a brilliant civilization. Also, geography played a role. They were isolated somewhat from the rest of the world at that particular time. To the north, they were bound by the Mediterranean Sea. To the east, they were bound by the Red Sea. And to the west and south, it would be desert, the Sahara River. But they were totally dependent upon the Nile. Unlike the Tigris and Euphrates, which were unpredictable, the Nile was created. Every July, August, around this time, it would flood. And this allowed civilization to take hold there in Egypt. Now, Egyptian history is divided into kingdoms. You have the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. Now, it also is loaded down with a lot of lore or mythology. One of the most famous ones was about Osiris and Isis, his queen. Osiris was supposedly established the civilization, and he was killed by his evil brother Seth. Body cut up into 14 parts and thrown into the Nile. His faithful wife Isis, with the help of other gods and goddess, reassembled Osiris, and he became a symbol of the afterlife. And he became one of the one that judged individuals on that passage from earth to the afterlife. Osiris. And of course, what am I telling you this? The Egyptian polytheistic. They worship many gods and goddesses. I just identified Osiris, Isis, and of course their child king, god Horus, the falcon. Um, Also, the Egyptian came up with a building technique to create the perfect triangle, the pyramid. The pyramid was constructed to preserve and assist the Pharaoh, that's what they call their kings, on their journey to the afterlife. Uh, Magnificent construction during this particular time, unheard of. Can you imagine building a huge pyramid like the pyramid at Giza of King Khufu? Uh, Perfect alignments. There are no heavy equipment. There are no computers. These people did this on their own. So one thing we know, they were brilliant mathematicians and builders. The pyramid symbolized a tomb for the Pharaoh and his family. But it also developed a new system of taking care of the body after death, and it's called mummification. And I'm sure you're familiar with mummies. You've seen movies about the mummy. This is where the body is drained of all blood and liquids. The internal organs are taken out, and then salt is added, and then they're wrapped in linen cloth. The bodies have been known to last up to even today. Perfect texture, but it shows you the power of salt. Salt drains liquid from fruits, vegetables, and meat. Mummification. Now, in art and writing, the Egyptians are similar to the Sumerians. They developed their own form of writing. Unlike the Mesopotamian, who had to rely on clay tablets, in the Nile Valley grew a reed, and they learned to smash it together, dry it, and come together. It creates paper. As you know, in Mesopotamia, there are no trees. There are very little plant life, and paper is made from pulp. So the Egyptian came up with a system of writing called hieroglyphics or priest carving, and you can see pictures of this carving in tombs and other artifacts recovered from this time period. The Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom was basically the Egyptian was left alone, but during the New Kingdom, chaos ensues. They were, for the first time, invaded by groups of people. One group that stopped by would be called the Phoenicians, and we know about them because we adopted their alphabet. The Phoenicians are Semites originating near Lebanon. They continued westward from Egypt and established a colony in Tunisia today called Carthage. We're going to talk about that when we get to the Romans. But don't forget the Phoenician and the alphabet. Another group would be the Hittites, who had come from the east and conquered Asia, set up a kingdom, eventually ended up in modern day Turkey. But another group would be the Hyksops. Now they gave the Egyptian the knowledge of building carriage and working with bronze. The Egyptian built upon this, took this, and used these weapons to run the Hyksops out of the Nile Delta. These Hyksops would continue to live in the area. Many would move back to Palestine and there. But during this particular time, I want to point out to you, arose a pharaoh named Akhenaten. And Akhenaten introduced monotheism to the Egyptian. It was imposed from above, so it wasn't very much liked by the masses of Egyptians. They were mainly polytheistic. They had various gods depending on what their needs and their worship was. But now here is a pharaoh saying there's only one God, and his name is Amun-Re, the sun god. Many people was killed. Priests were beheaded. But Akhenaten imposed his personal belief in monotheism along with his wife, supposedly the most beautiful person, a woman in the world, Nefertiti. When Akhenaten dies, he is replaced by his son, Tutankhamun, sometimes referred to as King Tut. You've seen pictures of his mask. He was a sickly child. He died late. But he restored Egypt back to its polytheistic ways. It was a lesson learned as far as belief system. It cannot be imposed from above. It has to originate from below and migrate up. So